Cuba is the last communist state in the Western Hemisphere, and suddenly, it's back in America's political crosshairs. Donald Trump is escalating rhetoric against Havana. Sanctions are tightening. Migration pressure is rising. And Cold War language is returning. This is not nostalgia. This is a live geopolitical pressure point. The question is no longer whether tensions are growing. The real question is, could Cuba become the next crisis zone just 90 miles from the United States? For decades, Cuba was treated as a frozen conflict, a leftover chapter from the Cold War. But today, the island is facing its worst economic collapse in modern history. Inflation is spiraling. Food shortages are visible in everyday life. Fuel is scarce. Blackouts last for hours. Hospitals lack basic supplies. Young Cubans are leaving in record numbers. And when a country loses its youth, it loses its future. Mass protests in recent years shocked the government. These were not small demonstrations. They were the largest unrest Cuba had seen in decades. The regime survived, but barely. And Washington noticed. Trump has always framed Cuba as unfinished Cold War business. During his presidency, he reversed the diplomatic thaw initiated by Obama. Travel restrictions returned, financial channels tightened, sanctions intensified. His philosophy is simple. Pressure creates cracks, and cracks weaken regimes. For Trump, Cuba represents both ideology and domestic politics. Florida is a critical battleground state. Cuban-American voters strongly support a hardline stance. That makes Cuba a political lever inside the United States. Foreign policy becomes election strategy. The most immediate fear is not war, it's migration. When Cuba destabilizes, people flee. And history has already shown what that looks like. The 1980 Mariel boat lift sent over 100,000 Cubans to Florida. It overwhelmed U.S. infrastructure. It created social panic. It reshaped American politics. Today, conditions in Cuba are even more fragile. If economic collapse accelerates, another exodus is possible. And in modern America, migration is one of the most explosive political issues. A Cuban crisis would instantly become a domestic battlefield. Cuba is not isolated. Russia has re-established strategic ties. China is investing in infrastructure and intelligence presence. For Moscow and Beijing, Cuba is symbolic. Its proximity, its pressure. It's a reminder that the U.S. is not untouchable. Every superpower seeks influence near its rivals. Cuba gives Russia and China a geopolitical foothold near American territory. That alone makes the island strategically sensitive. Any escalation involving Cuba would not stay regional. It becomes part of global power competition. Modern conflict rarely looks like tanks crossing borders. It looks like slow suffocation, financial restrictions, trade isolation, currency collapse, information pressure. Economic warfare can destabilize governments without firing a single bullet. Cuba's economy is already hanging by a thread. Tourism fluctuates. Currency reforms have failed. State industries are inefficient. Sustained external pressure could push the system past its breaking point. That's the fear in Havana. And the calculation in Washington. Cuba is not just foreign policy, it's campaign fuel. Every U.S. election cycle resurrects the Cuba question. Hardline rhetoric plays well with certain voter blocs. Soft diplomacy is framed as weakness. Trump understands symbolic politics. Standing firm against a communist regime sends a message. It's domestic theater with international consequences. And when elections intensify, so does the language. Direct military conflict remains unlikely, but crises don't need invasions to spiral. A refugee wave could destabilize Florida politics. Sanctions could deepen humanitarian suffering. Foreign involvement could heighten superpower tension. Small flashpoints create chain reactions. And Cuba sits in a location where every reaction is magnified. Cuba represents something larger than itself. It's a symbol of unresolved Cold War history, a test of modern geopolitical pressure, and a reminder that fragile states can trigger global anxiety. Trump's posture toward Cuba is not about immediate war. It's about leverage, influence, and the optics of strength. But pressure is unpredictable. History shows that isolated systems don't collapse quietly. They fracture loudly. And when they do, neighbors feel the shock first. The world isn't watching Cuba by accident. It's watching because instability close to power centers always matters. And sometimes, the smallest islands trigger the biggest storms.